Welcome back to our last series of the One Plus One here at the Elm. Today we're going to be talking about generosity and community and what that looks like as we're talking about One Plus One. This plus is really important, right? Because you can have people, but what brings people together? What is this and? So I would love to ask you guys, like, what have you seen in churches in your years in ministry, and how does this play into community generosity?
I think for me, generosity is about elevating the other one. So the plus here is a heart that says, I want the other person to thrive. And that for me, that looks like two things. It's giving up your resources, but it does so to lift that person up. And if I can focus on one resource, that would be time. You give up your time for that other person, and also you give up that time with the other person. And what I mean by that is, you certainly have to give up your time for the other person whenever you're spending time to build them up, to build that relationship with that other individual, your friend, to build those friendships. But after you've built that friendship, you have to give up your time with your friend so that your friend will thrive in all the other relationships that form. I think in community, sometimes what we attempt to do is hold people when we should be building them up and releasing them. And a lot of times churches, or really any community, because you've invested so much into them, you're thinking, well, I don't want to lose this closeness, this connection. And so you kind of bar them from, engaging in new friendships, broader still. I see that in marriages sometimes, where like the spouses will be like, well, we're married now, so you should be home all the time. But your spouse still needs all of those friends to pour into them, and or for that person to pour into others. And so it's not just giving up your time for the individual, it's giving up your time with the individual so that they will thrive in all the other relationships they're meant to have, right? And I think, we were talking about that some before in the earlier parts of this series where, each person has different communities that they're a part of, and the church doesn't replace all of them. Rather, it helps us live out of those communities in a healthier manner. So the church community is not going to replace our families or our friendships or our neighborhood. It's going to empower us and equip us to be more present and more loving in our friendships, our marriages, our neighborhood presence. Which also means then that we have to release people and say, like, I'm going to give up some of my time with you because I do want you to be present in the neighborhood. I do want you to be present in your homes. I do want you to be present in your friendships and even with your coworkers. Christians should be having meals with their coworkers. They should be, opening up their lives to those that they spend a lot of time with. I mean, in New York, you spend 70, 80 hours with your coworkers per week. So, why not? Why not open up your lives in that way? And so generosity for me is going to be about empowering individuals by setting them free almost, like there's a sense of how much do you give up for them and then with them, time with them.
I think it's so good because I have to say, those who are in ministry and are married, your spouses go through a lot, right? Like, I don't think we give enough credit. Think about like Sonia or Trusty, like even all those who are out there who are married, like your spouses who are enveloped in your ministry walk, like they also have to deal with a lot because you do so much for the church and for the community. I really want to commend that. I think, first of all, spouses of people who work in churches, amazing job that you can let go, like what Dave was saying, so that they can work with other people and grow with other people and develop even within their own character and their spirituality. Also, like that helps me. Like when I see, you're supposed to do that, then I now can work with you. Because I'm not doing this alone. Like we are now working with you because your spouses are allowing you to grow and they're generous with their time so that you can grow. And that's so interesting because I think when people think of generosity, they're only thinking about money. They're only thinking, oh, this must be a church asking for money. But no, you're definitely right. Like allowing someone to grow and letting them go so that they can do other things. That's really different. Yeah.
Dave, I love that you mentioned that we should be generous in the way we spend our time with those outside just the church community too, like our friends, our coworkers. I think a common misconception is that when you're part of a church community, these are the only people that you will ever spend time with, like church community, that's all you build. But if we're trying to be a healthy community, we want to share the resources that we have here, like the gospel. We want to share the gospel with those who, of course, I hope not just in our church community, but those outside the church community. And, I just love that you said that we need to be sharing our time, our money, our efforts, all these different resources that we have that God has given to us with those outside the church community. And one thing that I've been trying as well to work on in terms of generosity is being generous with my words and affirmations. I think being born and raised in New York City, you don't just tell your neighbor in the subway train, hey, I really like your outfit today. Or, I think that can come off as very weird. I don't know if New Yorkers know how to accept a compliment or these interactions from strangers. We just grew up, looking down and minding your own business, being to yourself. Being communal is not our natural way of living here in New York City. And I would love, as, one family, one unit, to combat that. How can we be more generous with our words and sharing? I just love the way that, you had that full conversation with this child. How did you even do that? Or I love the way that so-and-so, whichever behaviors that we want to see more of. The way people open up their homes, even when they're tired, they still welcome their friends over for a drink, or even sharing their time and energy with those who are downtrodden, or whatever resource that you're offering up and for somebody else. We should highlight those moments and, bring attention to that if we want to see more of it. So being generous with our words.
Yeah. I think those two are so huge, right? The things you guys talked about, whether it's with your time, being generous with your words, affirmation, that's huge. Especially people just need to hear that they're doing a good job, or, hey, like, you've been gifted, and that's so affirming. Lester, you talked about how generosity inevitably falls into the money category. I think it's hard not to talk about it. It's so important because ultimately there's so much value we place, especially in wealth, and I think part of the analogy with the 1+1 is, in order to give to the other one, you first have to be secure in your own identity. When you're not secure, then you take wealth as your security. And it's hard to be generous then, because you're always thinking, I don't have enough. So I need to accumulate more and more and more. It's the same with time. It's the same with affirmations. I don't want to give affirmation because I don't think I receive affirmation. Or I don't have enough time because, there's just too much I need to do right now. And I think when we have a secure understanding of who we are in God, in Christ, that frees us then to be generous with whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's with our words even, and how we see the other. And I think generosity then blooms in all these areas because they all need to work in tandem. You can't be free with, your words or your time and not be free with your money, because ultimately those things require each other. When you're meeting with someone, you're going to inevitably have to spend money eating out. Or you're going to spend money on them because you have to cook, whether you eat out or cook, different things. And I think all of that, it just works together. And I think one of the most beautiful things about community, as Christian community, I experienced in my life was when people pay for each other's meals, especially when the other person cannot return the favor. It was just really big in college, where older members of my church would come and take out college students or high schoolers, and then spend a lot of money on them, take them out for lavish dinners, things that they would never have fathomed. And then that in itself is like, wow, like I'm taking you to a place that you would have never thought possible. But it's not because I just want to show off my wealth or show off that I'm generous, but it's to say, hey, like I value enough to be like, hey, I want you to experience this as well. You know, there's certain things that we can give that's special with generosity. You know, and I think that's us even sharing our own stories with other people. Yeah.
I think for me, when we're talking about building a healthy community, it means that we are working towards empowering people to be at their healthiest place in life.
Yeah.
Right? A healthy community doesn't mean that everyone comes healthy. It means that we are working towards, you know, supporting those who are moving in that direction to be healthy in life. And that support ultimately is on the backbone of generosity. And so at the church, you know, we have Mercy Fund, we have the counseling support, because it does take those layers of community for each individual to thrive. You know, the church can't be everything for any single person. It can't be your whole network of social support. You know, we encourage people to have a counselor, to have friends outside, coworkers, be involved in the neighborhood, find neighbors that they connect with, because it does, each individual, it needs all of those layers. And if we can support that, we will. And so as a church, we do help with finding a counselor or a therapist, someone that you can confide in beyond just this community, because we all need that. You know, a healthy community is one that's going to be invested in the health of all of its members. And that's on the backbone of generosity. The giving at the Elm, it's been so good. People give towards this, and this is why we're able to take care of our people. It's on the backbone of generosity. It's people who say, you know what, this is what generosity is towards, building communities that empower the thriving of our people. I think that's really important.
I think lastly with generosity, it's definitely, it's been so helpful to see radical generosity. One, because we understand that Christ has given up his life.
Yeah.
But like for our God that we worship has given up his life for us. How dare we actually keep anything? It's kind of like, well, everything that you have is his, right? Like we are living on borrowed capital. Everything that we have is his. You know, so I would say like even here at the Elm, like I'm so encouraged that it's not just our people, but our people goes out to the neighborhood. Like our community is now, you know, encouraged to serve the neighborhood. I think about COVID and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like the generosity that you guys gave and the amount of money that we raised to just a neighborhood was able to give like tens of thousands to the local hospital. Like the pandemic was here in our neighborhood, the epicenter of the epicenter, Elmhurst. Elmhurst Hospital, horrible, it was terrible at the time. But we were able to get masks and all these things that just came in, right? We worked with like tier 1, you know, elementary school kids, and there was just like hundreds of school bags in my living room. You know, like my neighbors saw it. It was so crazy. Generosity, it was not just money, it was also time. It was the amount of work that was put into that, you know? You think about even like bringing like, you know, our vaccination buses. Nobody thought about bringing vaccination buses here. But there was effort and time that was put into working with the mayor's office, bringing that into the neighborhood. So definitely it's not just within these 4 walls of our church, right? We are now empowered to go out. There's a sense of urgency, right? There's a sense of urgency and understanding our time is limited here. You're not promised another day to live here on earth, right? There's nowhere that says in the Bible. But because we're saved by grace, now I want to do this. I want to go out there because there's so many things happening in our neighborhood. The vibrations are strong. There are things to be done here. Seeking the well-being of our city is so vital right now, right? Being in the most diverse place in the world. You know, so I think about even like how we serve people through the generosity of our people here in our community. You know, you're right, like the counseling programs that we have here. Like I love counseling. I love getting counseled. I've been going for 6 years. So no shame in that. You know, like bi-weekly counseling is great. If you have health insurance, why not get, you know, counseling, mental insurance? So I feel like, yeah, I feel like counseling is so important because during COVID, like you're stuck like to your own self. It was tough. You couldn't really go out there. You're really like isolated. You know, so what we did there was I see the Elm Church doing something with that and saying, how do we support counseling for you? I filled out an application and then there it is. And like sessions are there, find something for you. And I think that in itself is a huge example of what generosity looks like, right? So definitely money is included. Like, listen, everyone should be tithing, right? Don't cheat God. Don't cheat God. I don't even understand why people say just 10%. No, actually, he gave you 100%, so everything belongs to him. So be radically generous. Money definitely helps, right? It pays for your staff. Like, if you think you want to make 6 digits, then you should be thinking about how your pastors and staff should be making 6 digits. Like, they work 24/7, right? Of course, they're not looking for that, but it's important that that happens. Giving money into the church, then using that and saying, how do we now empower our people to do things in the neighborhood with your time, your resources? Like what you're saying, like all of us have resources outside of ourselves. Pull that in, do something for the sake of the kingdom, right? Because we're seeking the well-being of our city. If that's our goal and we have a God that loves us, then yeah, like go all out, right? Like be generous. Like what happens in the Church of Acts, like I think those churches really pulled in their money and it was amazing, but then now everyone's so like, they're so private and they just want to hoard everything. And I just can't imagine how little is done when you hoard your belongings that really belongs to God.
Speaking of staff and some of our initiatives in the city, what I love about our staff's methodology is that we always include our neighbors in the work that we're doing. It's not us serving our city, it's us working with our city to serve our city. So that it's together. We don't draw a line as helper and help receiver. This is our home. This is our neighborhood. We have to do it together. Like Sandy, when you run your initiatives in the park, you're so quick to get other people involved, and then they have like a part to play. Like that's so vitally important. I love that. I love that. Like we do that. Even with all of these initiatives, that's what we did. And so when we're being generous to support that kind of work, what we're doing is we're not throwing money at something. We're empowering relationships where the neighborhood raises the neighborhood. That's what we're doing here. We're empowering relationships and people to care for each other. That's so vitally important. Generosity moves that forward.
Thank you so much for joining us for our 1+1 series. Obviously, again, we are not experts in this. We are doing this together, right? And we're just sharing where we are now and what we've been through in our church ministry. Again, we would love for you to talk about this with your churches. We're inviting you to do more of this. Obviously, if there's more comments and we know like what you're curious on, please, like maybe we'll do more series in the future or even do this with you. But again, we just really want to have you participate with us in these conversations, in the dialogue of what it means to have community that is deeper than just, doing life together or, like doing ministries together. There's so much more to that. Again, we're doing this with you so that you can talk about this with your church as well. And we're inviting you into this conversation. So if there's anything that you want to know more of or any questions, please just write it on the bottom or wherever you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, on our website. I don't know where it is. But really appreciate that you're part of this. We do this because we really want healthier communities. We do this because we really value relationships. Here at the Elm, relationships are so important. We don't want to treat people like projects. We feel that. We know it when we sense it. So we're hoping to have healthier communities. And by talking about these topics, we really believe that can happen. Thank you again for viewing.